Dr. Jacobs, let's start with you. You and I discussed at length yesterday the flooding that occurred in Texas and the tragedy that unfolded. As the head of NOAA, which oversees the National Weather Service, if confirmed, what will you do to better ensure that Americans are aware of and able to respond to emergency weather warnings, especially those that arrive in the middle of the night?
Thank you for that question. As I said in my opening statement, numerical weather prediction and advancing that is a top priority. And the Weather Service did a great job. But there's a lot of things I would love to improve, obviously, weather forecasting being one of them. I'd also love to advance and modernize NOAA weather radio. NOAA weather radio saved my life in 1996. There's a lot of other things we can do as far as communications, because as you said, even if the forecast is perfect, getting the warnings to the people, particularly at late hours of the night, is a challenge. I think we can do more advancements, moving away from copper wire, moving towards telecom, potentially satellite, to send out these messages. We also need more data in doing post-storm assessments. One of the things that I've envisioned, because I've worked on several aviation accidents with NTSB, is something along the lines of what they do, but for weather disasters. Because we need the data to understand what went right, what went wrong, whether people got the warnings, if they did or didn't, and if they did they not understand them?
You mentioned that NOAA weather radio had saved your life. Would you elaborate on that and tell us what happened?
I was at a campsite in Florida with some friends, and it issued a tornado alert, and it was about 10 p.m., and this was back before I had a cell phone or smartphone, and I took out a gazetter, and I looked at the towns that it mentioned along the way, and I extrapolated the direction, which was right over where I knew we were. And so I drove around the campsite and held my horn down and told as many people as I could to leave, and everyone left. We went further down the coast to a hospital and went into the emergency room because it was the closest brick building. When we went back to the campsite, it was nothing but bare dirt.
Wow. In 2017, Hurricane Harvey devastated entire communities all up and down Texas's Gulf Coast. The damage to our state was well over $120 billion and may prove to be closer to $180 billion when all is said and done. Texans prepare for hurricanes and flooding by using NOAA's weather forecasts, but European numerical weather prediction models have been outperforming U.S. models in forecasting. It's a question for both Dr. Jacobs and Mr. Jordan. If confirmed, how do you plan to close the gap and ensure that NOAA's forecasts are the best in the world?
Closing the gap was going to require a mix of collecting more and better observations, because these prediction or initial value problems, they all start from better observations, and then data assimilation. So the joint effort for data integration and data assimilation system. One of the reasons why the Europeans have a better model than the U.S. is they use four-dimensional variational data assimilation. The U.S. needs to advance its data assimilation work and also consolidate its modeling systems across resolutions of time and space.
Mr. Jordan.
I agree with Dr. Jacobs. So of the pillars of creating a weather forecast, you have model code development, you have observations, you have data assimilation, and you have supercomputing or HPC to run the forecasts. As far as observations goes, we actually absolutely need to push the technology stack forward and ingest new sources of data. But the Europeans also have that same data. So what's the difference between the American modeling and the European modeling? It's part of it is model code development and data assimilation. And I think we need a targeted investment into data assimilation to make sure that we can push that ball forward and have a better weather forecast.
Dr. Jacobs, one of the things you and I talked about yesterday was your vision for expanding cloud computing for weather forecasting. Can you describe what you envision there?
Sure. So one of the things that I think would be a tremendous leap forward for the National Weather Service is the system that they process the information on. called AWIPs. They have to download the data locally. And the higher resolution files get, whether it's data or model output, the longer it takes them to get that information. That's one issue. The other issue is they have to be behind the computer to do this work. And I think transitioning this software to the cloud so they're actually uploading the code instead of downloading the data, as well as having the ability to have a laptop so they can access it from anywhere, it not only improves their ability to get the data faster, but it would allow a forecaster from anywhere to do a forecast for anywhere.
And so you were saying this would enable forecasters from the National Weather Service to embed in an emergency operations center and be right there on the ground in a crisis.
Correct. Yeah, they could literally work from anywhere. And so embedding in the emergency management centers, particularly during major weather events, would be really advantageous.
Okay, last question. It is an ongoing problem, particularly in South Texas, dealing with illegal Mexican fishermen, lanchas coming and illegally fishing Texas red snapper. The Coast Guard fights against it. The federal government fights against it. This illegal fishing is actually paid for by Mexican drug cartels in many instances. Dr. Jacobs, what more can NOAA do to combat the problem of illegal fishing in Texas?
Appreciate the question. IUU fishing, it's another top priority of mine. As you know, just recently, 40 tons of red snapper were seized at a port in Brazil that were headed towards the U.S., as well as this last April, around 700 pounds of red snapper was seized just off of Brownsville from Mexican fishermen that were illegally fishing in U.S. waters. I think it's a mix of new technology. There are ways when these boats turn off their transponders to track them through satellites. I also think as part of combating IUU, the Seafood Inspection Monitoring Program, beefing up that, actually looking at potentially not just for like fishing, but like aquaculture things like shrimp that are brought into the U.S. Like a lot of people aren't aware, but almost all that shrimp is mislabeled. So understanding the origins of the seafood.
Thank you very much.